What if calmness were not the absence of effort, but the very birthplace of creation? What if the single act of easing your jaw and opening your palm rearranged the invisible architecture of your life so that opportunities, conversations, and doors could line up with quiet, almost effortless precision? Stay calm and let the universe work everything out for you. That is not an invitation to passivity. It is an instruction in clarity. When you become a steady field, the world can respond. Listen for a moment to the rhythm of your breath. Inhale slowly, as if filling a small room inside your chest. Exhale, releasing more than air, releasing the posture of urgency. Breathe again, deliberately. Feel the shoulders drop. Notice the space behind your sternum widen. If this message touches something in you, stay with it for the next breath. This is not a ritual of magic. It is a tiny training ground where you practice sending a cleaner signal into the field of your life. The premise is simple and radical at once. Your inner state broadcasts. Your thoughts, your emotions, the tone of your attention, these are not private. They compose a kind of instruction set that reaches outward. Think of your mind as electrical in character, thoughts firing like small currents. Think of your feelings as magnetic, the affective pull that organizes what those thoughts attract. Together, they make a frequency, not a mystical, untestable thing, but a lived, experiential tone that you, moment by moment, are transmitting. When your pieces are scattered, anxious thoughts fried by hurry, emotions rattled by fear, the signal you send is noisy. It looks like a clenched fist, tight, closed, refusing to receive. The world meets that fist with friction. Opportunities require gesture. They require margins. They cannot land in a hand that will not open. So you are asked to open the palm, not to give up striving, but to create the conditions for what you want to arrive. Open the palm and let the touch happen without squeezing the outcome into place. There is a physiology that accompanies this practice. When you soften and slow your breath, the body shifts from a defensive posture to a receptive one. Your heart settles into a steadier rhythm. Your neck relaxes. Your shoulders release their habitual guard. Researchers have observed correlates, measurable tendencies, where states of calm associate with lowered stress hormones and with coordinated patterns between heart and brain. I offer these descriptions cautiously. They are not the final word and they are not magic spells, but they are practical signposts. When your internal systems align, your perception widens. You notice threads you missed when you were rushing. You begin to feel the tug of intuition. Subtle, true, and often quiet. Imagine two boats on a wide river. One is slammed against the rudder, engine screaming, a person on deck paddling frantically to change course.
That boat moves in jerks and retreats more often than it advances. The other boat has its sail set and its crew attentive. They nudge the sheet when the wind whispers. They shift their weight when the current deepens. The second boat does not wait for a miracle. It uses conditions with skill. This is the distinction between forcing and allowing. Forcing is noisy, fear-driven, and short-lived. Allowing is an art of alignment that includes action, but different action, responsive, clear, timely. Forcing is also predictable in its physiology. You recognize it in yourself. Clenched jaw, held breath between words, shallow inhales that leave your chest tight and your mind narrow. Your attention compresses into a small point, future threatened, present blurred. In that compressed state, you are not open to the surprising routes the world can offer. You do not notice a friendly stranger who could connect you to a needed resource. You miss a book whose title appears on a bookstore shelf at a moment when you were ready because your attention was elsewhere. Allowing, by contrast, is spacious. It is not passive drift. It is a poised readiness. Picture the palm turned up, not grasping, but receptive. The body softens, the chest feels lighter, and you have the capacity to perceive faint signals, an inkling, a sudden clarity, an image that arises and refuses to be dismissed. Those signals are not commandments from outside. They are suggestions offered to a mind at rest that can hear them and act. The nervous system is the instrument of trace here. When it is regulated, when the rhythm of breath, heart, and brain find a kind of friendly coherence, you function from a field of greater possibility. When people speak about the universe responding, they sometimes mean a supernatural rearrangement that happens independent of you. What I mean is more intimate and more practical. When you study yourself, your choices change. You are drawn to different conversations. You show up differently in meetings. You notice opportunities you would otherwise miss. Synchronicities begin to look less like coincidences and more like frequent patterns. A particular mentor appears at precisely the moment you are ready to hear them. A job listing names the exact phrase you had rehearsed in private. A neighbor knocks when you have a question and carries exactly the resource you needed. None of this is guaranteed, and none of it is evidence of magical law in an absolutist sense. But there is a clear statistical truth in human life. People who consistently operate from calm tend to report more meaningful alignments. You might ask, how does calmness actually magnetize? Think in practical terms. A clear mind makes better decisions. A regulated nervous system gives you the patience to follow an intuition and the discernment to avoid vanity-driven shortcuts. People are attracted to steady presence. You walk into a room aligned and you do not broadcast anxiety. You broadcast assurance.
Others pick up on that. Doors open differently when you are not dragging a storm with you. Now, what about action? Some hearing, let the universe do its work, hear an excuse to wait. That is not the direction here. Allowing is the root of inspired action. When you are in a receptive posture, you are more likely to see the next practical step and to take it with clarity rather than frantic hope. Here is the difference. Desperate action is schizophrenic energy. It is a scattershot attempt to fix a future that feels threatened. Inspired action is a precise move arising from clarity. It carries focus and endurance. Desperate action burns bridges and exhausts your system. Inspired action builds, steadily, like laying stone on a foundation. Let me give you a concrete way to feel this difference now. Sit or stand comfortably. Breathe in for a count that feels natural. Let the inhale be full but not forced. On the exhale, soften the jaw and allow your shoulders to drop. Imagine loosening a clasp at the top of your chest. Notice what changes in your mind when the body relaxes even a fraction. You do not need to fix anything. You are simply letting your nervous system know it is safe enough to notice. This small, repeatable cue, a breath that invites softening, is a practical tool you can carry into meetings, into moments of doubt, into decisions. Imagine for a moment your life as a garden. Fear is a gardener who hoards seeds in a closed chest, planting furiously where soil is thin and calling it productivity. Calmness is the gardener who prepares the ground, waters patiently, and trusts that the season will deliver what seed and soil allow. Which gardener produces more abundance? The practice of calmness is the daily tending, a little pause, a softening, a breath, a return to your center. Over time, the soil of your life changes. It becomes more accepting of growth. In the spirit of teachings like those found in Seth Speaks and the work of Jane Roberts, not by quoting them, but by leaning on the pattern of thought they helped popularize, understand that the field you living is responsive in proportion to the clarity of your signal. Use that lineage as inspiration rather than doctrine. You are the interpreter of your experience. You are not being told to abandon action or to rely on wishful thinking. You are being invited to refine the way you show up in the world so that your actions have greater alignment with what you intend. Let me tell you about two kinds of stories that often arrive to illustrate this: the hurried rescuer and the steady receiver. The hurried rescuer rushes into every new strategy with the wild urgency of scarcity. They jump from one thing to another, chasing outcomes that never quite arrive. They exhaust themselves and the people around them, and they often miss simple openings because their eyes are fixed on distant shores. The steady receiver, on the other hand, cultivates rituals of return. They take 5 deep breaths before a difficult conversation. They pause for a moment of stillness before responding to an email that triggers them. They know how to rest into what is present and then act. The results are not always instant, but the results compound. Opportunities that would be lost to noise tend to land near the steady receiver. You are invited to start small and return often. Here are practical tools to practice the art of allowing. First, an embodied breath anchor. Second, a softening ritual for the face and neck. Gently massage the space between your eyebrows. Unclench the jaw. Loosen the tongue from the roof of the mouth. Third, a micro-decision protocol. When faced with a choice that matters, pause long enough to take one full cleansing breath before committing. Those micro-patterns, repeated, become a nervous system discipline. They do not guarantee specific outcomes. They increase the probability that your actions will be born of clarity. Consider the metaphor of electricity and magnetism again, but as a metaphor with careful framing. When we say thoughts are electrical and emotions magnetic, We are using language to describe how attention and feeling combine to influence behavior and perception. This is not a claim that you can write an equation and force the physical world to obey it. It is a phenomenological description. When your mind is charged with a clear intention and accompanied by steady feeling, you behave differently, and different patterns of interactions unfold around you. Think of it as a tuning dial. The finer the tuning, the more coherent the song you sing to the world. Synchronicity often arrives as an answer to a question you barely voiced. You see a phrase repeated in places that matter, a conversation whose timing is uncanny, a person whose experience matches precisely the gap you were trying to bridge. This is not luck alone. It is the intersection of preparation, perception, and a receptive posture. The field does what it can with the signal it receives. If you want more answerable fields, clean the signal. Now, how do you distinguish inspiration from wishful thinking? Inspiration has a somatic signature. It carries a sense of lightning, a clarity that feels different from the urgency of desire. When inspiration strikes, there is often a subtle invitation, a thought that lands lightly but persistently. It may repeat. It may arrive in a dream or while you are washing dishes. It is not brittle. It does not demand immediate execution. It nudges. Wishful thinking is loud and anxious. It demands outcomes and creates an internal drumbeat that drives you to overreach. Let us return for a moment to the image of the open palm. Open your hand mentally and picture the life you want landing gently into that space, not because you did nothing, but because your upkeep, your nervous system practices, your breath anchors, your daily softening, made you a suitable receiver.
You may have to reach out and take practical steps. You may have to send emails, make calls, offer your work. That work will be different when done from a place of calm. It will be clearer, more patient, less reactive. There are subtle social dimensions to this practice as well. People calibrate to one another. Someone who is habitually frantic creates a social field that perpetuates frenzy. Someone who is steady offers others a space to settle. Think of your presence as a technological tool of sorts. It improves the bandwidth of the rooms you enter. Presence is contagious in a generous way. When you embody calm, you allow others to breathe more easily. You make conversations more effective. You magnetize helpful collaboration. At times, returning to calm feels dangerously close to denial. You might worry that in slowing down, you will miss a window, or that you are being complicit with passivity. That is a legitimate fear. The remedy is discernment, not speed. Ask yourself, is this fear prompting a useful move, or is it reflexive avoidance? One test is to look at the energy after the choice. Does it lead to more clarity or to more anxiety? If you cannot tell, choose a tiny, inexpensive experiment and notice the feedback. Small experiments, repeated, outpace grand gestures done from panic. Practice is the secret ingredient. Calmness is a muscle. You will not replace every impulsive pattern overnight. You will trip, tighten, and retrain. The point is repetition. Return to the breath. Return to the softening ritual. Return to the open palm image. Each time you return, you strengthen your habitual set point. Over weeks and months, you will notice that your default state, what you fall back into when the world tilts, becomes steadier. That steadiness is magnetic. It creates longer arcs of possibility. Here is a short, practical ritual to begin integrating into your day. The ritual requires no special time block. It can be done while standing at a sink, in a line, or before a meeting. Place one hand lightly over your sternum. Take a long, intentional inhale, feeling the hand rise with your chest. Exhale and imagine the hand lowering, not because you are forcing a breath out, but because you are allowing the body to settle. Say silently to yourself, I open, I receive. Then relax the face and let your shoulders drop. Do this 3 times. Notice what changes in your attention and in how you imagine the next step in front of you. As you practice, you will also begin to notice the rhythm of your decisions. People often oscillate between frantic acting and frozen waiting. The middle path, calm, receptive action, stabilizes that oscillation. When you meet resistance, check your posture. Are you tightening against the resistance, or are you listening to what the resistance implies? Resistance is often information, a notice that the next step needs a tweak. It is rarely a mandate to give up entirely.
You may still wonder about the mysterious quality some call the universe. Call it whatever feels true to you, the field, the collective intelligence, the web of relationship. The label is less important than practice. Picture the field as an intelligent but courteous partner. It cannot deposit in your life what would create chaos without your participation. It offers opportunities when you are ready to engage with them skillfully. Your job is to be ready. Readiness is not frantic readiness. It is cultivated quiet. Let me share an example that many people recognize. Someone moves cities in pursuit of a new career. At first, they are frantic with networking, applying to dozens of positions a day, each rejection a validation of fear. Over time, they shift their approach. Fewer applications, but deeper engagement with people who move them, better interviews, more clarity about what they are willing to accept. In that second posture, synchronicities begin to appear. A chance conversation leads to an introduction. A former colleague pings you about an opening that wasn't even listed. The person is not magically spared difficulty. They still do the work. But their work is cleaner, better directed, and more likely to gather favorable responses. Here is a gentle caveat. Calmness does not mean you will like everything that happens. You will still face setbacks, disappointments, and grief. Calmness is not an anesthetic against suffering. Instead, it is a resource for moving through it with more coherence and less harm. When you practice calm, you do not avoid feeling. You allow feeling to move through you without taking over the steering wheel. Sometimes the practice will show up as a pause before a crucial text, a moment of clarity before a difficult call, an unhurried walk before a creative decision. Other times it will look like the courage to say no to a project that would drain you, or the patience to wait for a partner who matches your tempo. These are not glamorous moves. They are steady, often invisible choices that, over time, recompose the architecture of your life. As you cultivate this way of being, notice how your relationship with intuition shifts. Intuition is not a mystical gift given to some. It is a capacity honed by attention and safety. When your system is regulated, your intuition speaks with more clarity. It often arrives as a sense of rightness or an inner suggestion that nudges you towards certain people or projects. Test it. Small tests refine intuition. Take one tiny step suggested by a hunch and observe what happens. Over time, your inner compass will grow more reliable. There is also an ethical dimension to this practice. Operating from calm encourages choices that are sustainable and generous. It reduces the harm we do to ourselves and to others when we act from panic. Your life becomes a field not just of personal gain, but of generative presence.
You become someone in whom other people can trust, someone who steadies rather than destabilizes. That quality, quietly, is invaluable. Now, I want to anchor you with a brief practice that you can carry for the next week. Each morning, before responding to messages or diving into commitments, take 1 minute. Stand or sit. Place both feet firmly on the floor. Inhale slowly, noticing the ground under your feet. Exhale, and with the exhale, imagine widening the space behind your sternum. Allow your shoulders to drop. Open your palm in thought, not clenched, not grasping. Palm up, ready. Ask one simple question. What is the most aligned next step I can take today? Then choose that step. It can be tiny. It can be a 10-minute call, an email, or a quiet walk. Make a choice from the steadier place you have created. We have spoken about the mechanisms, the metaphors, the small practices. We have contrasted forcing and allowing, and yet the great test remains. Will you return to it when life tightens its grip? The nervous system loves repetition. The first time you soften, the change may be small, but on the 10th, the 50th, the 1000th return, your baseline begins to shift. You become in your daily life a different instrument, less reactive, more receptive, capable of inspired moves that were previously invisible. Before we continue, notice how the idea of letting the universe work might feel threatening. There is a legitimate fear associated with surrender, that you will be passive, that things will not change, that you will be forgotten. Those fears are valid and deserve compassion. Yet, what if surrender were redefined as active cooperation, a partnership where you do your work, but stay open to how the world arranges itself? What if ease could be an action rather than an escape? There are practical thresholds to watch for as you cultivate this practice. If your practice of calm becomes an excuse for avoidance, course correct by choosing a small action daily. If it becomes an aesthetic performance, a pose you maintain to impress others, return to private practices that strip away performance, walking alone in silence, a breath practice with no audience. The point is to base your life on steady return, not on one-off gestures. Think now of the river again. The river does not force the canyon to be a certain way. It moves, patient and persistent, carving its path over time. Your effort is like the water, consistent, adaptive, and sometimes gentle. You do not have to batter the world into compliance. You can become water-shaped, skilled at finding the gentle erosion route, persistent enough to reshape landscapes where needed. If you have come this far with me, take another breath. Feel the subtle difference between the voice of constriction and the voice of possibility. The voice of constriction says, hurry, fix it now. The voice of possibility says, notice, respond, trust the unfolding.
Which voice would you like to let guide your next move? There are people in the history of inner work who have used similar language to refer to the interplay between inner states and outer outcomes. Names like Seth Speaks, Jane Roberts. I invoke them as a source of inspiration rather than scripture. Use what is useful, discard what is not. The point is the practice, the repeated act of returning to calm until it becomes a familiar stance. You may still have practical questions about timing and action. When do you push and when do you yield? The distinction is not always obvious, but a helpful rule is this. When you push from panic, you narrow your lens. When you act from presence, your lens widens. Push when you have data and the move is required. Yield when the move is born of panic or a scarcity story. Yielding here is not cowardice, it is tactical delay, using time to gain clarity rather than making a decision that will require repair. A final note on relationships. Calmness transforms how you relate to others. When you are steady, you are less likely to mirror the anxiety of a partner. You can hold space for someone else's storm without being pulled into it. You become a lighthouse rather than a weather vane. This does not mean you withhold feeling. It means you maintain a baseline where your reactions are measured and your compassion is sustainable. As you prepare to step back into your day, carry this simple invitation. Open your palm. Let the image sit with you. Practice the breath anchor 3 times when you feel the pressure rising. Notice one synchronicity this week and mark it. Let it be a data point that encourages you. Above all, return to practice without judgment. Each moment of calm is a moment of repair for your nervous system and an opportunity to send a clearer signal into the field. If this exploration has resonated and you want further guidance in cultivating this steady presence, consider subscribing to explore more teachings inspired by Seth Speaks and Jane Roberts. There is more ahead, deeper practices, stories of synchronicity, and practical tools for translating calm into sustained results. But before we move on, there is one doorway we have not yet opened: how to hold persistent desire while practicing non-attachment. How to stay hungry for change without turning hunger into panic. How to keep the sail up and the rudder responsive when the wind shifts unpredictably. Imagine standing at the edge of a harbor at dusk. The sails around you catch different gusts. Your skin remembers the warmth of an earlier wind. You know the direction you want to go, but the current is uncertain. Do you furl the sail and wait for a perfect day? Do you lash yourself to a plan and risk capsizing? Or do you adjust inch by inch, letting the wind meet the sail while keeping your hands light on the rope? That balance of desire and non-attachment is the next rhythm to learn.
It asks you to hold both intention and loosening at once, to care without gripping, to aim without coercion. We will explore that balance next. The art of holding desire as a soft instrument, the practice of acting with intention without turning intention into desperation. For now, notice the posture you bring into this moment. Are you clenched? Are you open? What small adjustment could you make that would allow a different set of possibilities to appear? What small adjustment could you make that would allow a different set of possibilities to appear? Hold that question like a small compass. The balance we are learning, desire plus non-attachment, asks for a posture that is attentive without being needy, directional without being rigid. Imagine desire as a string tied to a kite. If you grip the string so tight it snaps, the kite tumbles. If you let go entirely, the kite drifts away. The wise hand holds with enough presence to guide and enough looseness to allow the wind to show the way. That is the practice we will explore now. First, notice how desire feels in the body. Desire often carries a forward rush, elevated heart rate, a tightening in the throat, an image that plays on loop. Those are energizing sensations, and they can be excellent fuel when harnessed skillfully. But too often desire becomes a pressure valve, a narrow funnel that presses the whole field into a single channel. Non-attachment is a parallel skill. It relaxes the funnel so the energy can move through more directions, and so other sources of information can join the enterprise. One practical frame to hold both is what I call intention with open hands. Begin by stating your intention simply and clearly, not as a command to the world, but as a description of direction. For example, I intend to find work that uses my design skills and pays sustainably. Say it once or write it down. Then add the qualifier. I am willing to be guided to the right next step. That second sentence softens the grip. It tells your nervous system that you are ready to act, but you are not about to force a single outcome at any cost. A short ritual helps to enact that frame. Take a piece of paper. At the top, write the intention in plain language. Underneath, list 3 actions you can take in the next week. Tiny, visible, practical steps. Next to each action, place a checkbox labeled feedback. At the end of the week, review the checkboxes and note what happened. Did any surprising door open? Did your attention pick up information you would otherwise have missed? This is a method of staying active while remaining humble about timing and form. It trains both decisiveness and receptivity. Discerning when to press and when to yield requires a kind of inner weather reading.
Learn to ask questions that check your tone, not just your plan. When you feel the pull to act, ask, is this impulse coming from grounded curiosity or from a constricted fear?
Grounded curiosity tends to feel like a steady forward move. It has texture, but not panic. Constricted fear is sharp, repetitive, and demands immediate relief. When the answer favors curiosity, take a clear, small step. When the answer leans toward fear, narrow the action to an experiment rather than a full commitment. Small experiments are the heart of non-attached desire. An experiment costs you little but yields data. Call one person you admire, send one concise email, draft one outline, and let it set for 24 hours before revising. The experiment is aimed at information, not rescue. This orientation, curiosity first, rescue later, reduces the rooms in which panic can flourish. You will sometimes meet resistance that looks like friction, and sometimes it will look like a wall. Friction might be a slow answer to an email. A wall might be a resounding no. Both are data. Friction invites adjustment, perhaps a different tone in your outreach, perhaps an alternative channel. A wall invites reevaluation, perhaps the intended outcome is misaligned with present conditions, or perhaps the wall is an invitation to deeper craft. The calmer you are, the better you become at distinguishing the two. Let us look at a small concrete story to make this clear. Imagine Sarah, a photographer who longs to book steady work with a particular magazine. She feels the impatience in her mouth. I must be accepted now. In her first posture, she blasts the editor with sample work every week, each message more urgent than the last. No reply. Her nervous system grows loud. Her attention flattens onto one hedge, and she misses other openings. Then she tries a different approach. She writes one thoughtful email attaching a small, curated set of images tailored to a story she actually read in that magazine. She spends 2 weeks building relationships with a few social accounts where the magazine's contributors post. She sends one concise note, and then she resumes her practice of 3-day breathing anchors. 2 months later, a contributor mentions a need for a collaborator and passes Sarah's name along. The result was not guaranteed, it was not immediate, it did require work, but the combination of clarity and ease opened a route the frantic pounding had obscured. You can see the difference. Both approaches involve action. One is desperate, a pounding noise. The other is intentional, a tuned vibration. Which one would you prefer to carry into your next ambition? There are practical anchors to help you hold desire lightly, even in the face of deadlines, crises, and social pressure. I give you 5 of them now, simple, embodied, and repeatable. 1. The 3-breath pause. Before you commit to any step that feels high stakes, breathe 3 full, deliberate breaths. On the exhale of a 3rd breath, notice the dominant impulse. Is it clarity, curiosity, or contraction? If contraction rules, choose a smaller option, an experiment or a delay rather than a leap.
2. The 2-option rule. When decisions escalate, create 2 small, doable options you can take within 48 hours. Both should be low cost. This reduces the illusion that only one move will fix everything. Often, simply moving on one option provides enough feedback to guide the next. 3. The feedback window. After taking an intentional small action, set a specific, limited window to watch for signals. 3 days, 1 week, or a month, depending on the scale. During that window, keep practicing your breath anchor. When the window closes, reflect and choose the next micro-step. 4. The presence check. At midday, notice whether your body is carrying a repeated worry. If so, confront it with curiosity. What practical next step could help? Then choose the smallest next task in service of that step. Do it with attention, not with the aim of erasing unease instantly. 5. The return ritual. Each evening before bed, take 2 minutes to place your hand on your sternum and revisit your intention. Offer it again with a soft phrasing. Here is my aim. I will do the next thing with clarity. I will let the rest unfold. This ritual keeps desire in dialogue with surrender. Each anchor is small, but potent, because it trains the nervous system through repeated, low-stakes exposures. As you do them, they become habits that alter baseline reactivity. Let us say a bit about timelines and expectation. Many spiritual teachings promise a shift if you merely change your thought. The more practical path we are sketching here acknowledges the role of repeated, aligned acts and the reality of time. The universe, or the field, or the web of practical relationships, works through processes. People grow into opportunities, networks take time to converge, and projects require cumulative attention. Calmness does not manufacture instant bypasses around time. Rather, it improves the quality and the trajectory of what unfolds within your allotted time. When you practice with a longer view, the pressure that produces frantic behavior often softens. You are more willing to invest in small pieces of craft, to keep a curious posture, and to maintain steady presence even when progress is not yet visible. That steady presence itself becomes a magnet, because it signals reliability. Reliability attracts collaborators, backers, and friends. The calm person is easier to plan with. The frantic person is harder to manage, and therefore less likely to be entrusted with complex projects. There is an important social skill that accompanies calmness: clear communication of limits and desires. Calm does not mean being vague. In fact, people who operate from calm can often be more direct because they are not fueled by panic. Practice stating your needs plainly. I can commit to this level of work, or I need 2 days to decide. Those statements reduce guesswork in the people around you and create the conditions where others can mirror steadiness back to you.
A mischievous trap shows up in many practices, spiritual bypassing. You might tell yourself to stay calm while neglecting necessary work, emotional processing, or boundary setting. Non-attachment is not a cloak for avoidance. Become curious. Are you avoiding because the task is hard, or because your fear wants to hide? Reframe avoidance as a signal. It often points to where support, learning, or slower strategy is needed. Then act with the same calm discipline. Seek help, learn a skill, or break a big task into micro steps. Another common misstep is weaponized calmness, using an aura of composure as a way to manipulate or to avoid accountability. True calm originates in integrity. It is transparent about limitations and honest about needs. It listens. It admits error. It holds steadiness while participating fully in the messy give and take of life. If your calmness ever feels cold, use it as a compass to return to compassion. Practice builds trust inside and outside you. The nervous system is not merely mechanical, it is relational. As your baseline steadies, people will begin to rely on you differently. You will be offered responsibilities that require endurance and presence. That is both an opportunity and a test. Preserve your practices, the very habits that help you receive, breath anchors, micro-experiments, feedback windows, also protect you from overcommitment. They are a way to steward your bandwidth. Let us explore a little more how synchronicity functions in a lived context. Synchronicity is not mysterious magic. It is a meeting of preparation and opportunity. When you practice calm, you notice more, you prepare more, and you are ready to follow small hunches. The field answers best to readiness. Imagine 2 gardeners waiting for rain. One has prepared soil, seedlings planted in good order. The other is impatient and has scattered seeds in a hurry. When the rain comes, the prepared patch sprouts. The same pattern holds with opportunities. How then to cultivate readiness? 3 practical habits increase your readiness ratio. First, keep a mulling list of nearby possibilities, small projects, people to contact, learning goals. Review it once a week and adjust. Second, maintain a tiny portfolio of your work or an elevator summary of what you do. When a door opens, you can act quickly because your materials and words are already coherent. Third, practice small acts of generosity, introductions, endorsements, sharing resources without immediate expectation. Generosity builds reputational momentum and reciprocal lines that the calm person can later access. Now consider the role of intuition again and how to refine it. Intuition is a skilled sense, honed by attention and feedback. Start by testing your hunches in miniature. If a hunch suggests a call to someone who might help, place a low-cost test, draft a short message and send it, or ask one clarifying question that invites a simple answer. Notice how often the hunch yields something usable. Keep a small journal of hits and misses. Over time, patterns emerge. You will learn what kinds of hunches are reliable for you. Those that come with a somatic lightness, those that repeat over days, those that arrive with a sense of alignment rather than force. A short caution: do not mistake coincidence for consistent pattern without adequate data. A single meaningful coincidence can be inspiring, but it is not proof. Calibration matters. Use curiosity and study practice to build a personal epistemology, a way of knowing that values both openness and evidence. As your practice deepens, the social and ethical dimensions blossom. Calmness is not merely about personal gain, it changes how you contribute. When you act from steadiness, your decisions tend to be less extractive and more sustainable. You are less likely to exploit others in a rush to fix your own scarcity. You are more able to hold long-term commitments. This is not moralizing, it is pragmatic. Sustainable choices produce compensatory returns for both you and your community. Calmness, practiced well, becomes a communal resource. There will be days when grief, illness, or shock upend everything. Do not expect continual equanimity. The practice is not perfection. It is a skill you return to even amid big storms. When things collapse, apply the same rudimentary tools. One breath, one micro-step, one check-in with a trusted ally. Sometimes the only appropriate action is to rest. Rest is not failure, it is a strategy. The field can work with you even as you rest, provided you do not abandon the basics of presence. We have spoken about tools. Now let us create a more extended practice that integrates breath, movement, intention, and reflection. A 20-minute sequence you can use once a day to strengthen your capacity to hold desire lightly and to allow outcomes their time. Begin seated, feet grounded. Place one hand on your sternum and one hand on your belly. Take 3 long breaths, feeling your hands move with each cycle. On the third exhale, whisper your intention in a sentence, clear but gentle. Spend 2 minutes scanning your body from head to toe, noting tension with curiosity. Where there is tightness, breathe into it and release a small fraction. Now imagine a timeline. 5 minutes into the future, 1 week, 1 month. Visualize one small next step for each point. Do not elaborate, simply note one tiny move for each marker. Stand up slowly, stretch your arms overhead and then open your palms to the sky, feeling the sensation of lifting and then releasing. Walk for 5 minutes with soft attention to your feet. As you walk, listen for a quiet image or phrase that arises. Write it down when you return. Sit again and spend 5 minutes planning one concrete action you can do within 24 hours that aligns with your intention. Finally, close with 3 breaths and the phrase, I do what I can.
I let the rest have its room. This sequence is not magical. It does something simpler and more consequential. It trains your nervous system to move from contraction to action to reflection. It makes you ready. Before we arrive at the close, let us address a subtle question: how to reconcile ambition and contentment. Desire drives growth, contentment grounds appreciation. Neither cancels the other. Use contentment as the soil in which ambition grows. Celebrate small wins. Recognize that a desire fulfilled will not fix a nervous system that is in constant hunger. Your practices of calmness transform the nature of desire itself, making it less about erosion and more about co-creation. As you practice, cultivate patience with the slow unfolding of character. The way you approach the world, the habits of attention, the tilting toward curiosity, often matters far more than any single outcome. People who cultivate calm become more reliable partners, better leaders, and steadier friends. They also tend to find more joy in ordinary moments, because they are not perpetually postponing contentment until an external marker appears. Return once more to the open palm. This image has carried us. The palm turns upward, receptive. It is not passive. It is prepared, aligned, and available. Hold it out now in your imagination, and let it be a test for your next move. If your hand clenches at any thought of the future, ask yourself, what small adjustment would allow me to open it just a bit? Make that adjustment. In closing, the practice we have traced is practical, humble, and powerful. To summarize without repeating, calmness is not the absence of action. It is the condition that makes action wiser. It is the place from which intuition speaks more clearly, from which synchronicities are noticed, from which sustained projects gather momentum. The more you return to the breath, the softening of the jaw, the opening of the palm, the more you shift your baseline. That baseline shift is what the phrase, let the universe work everything out for you, really points to. Not abandonment, but effective partnership. Before we finish, I offer a small evening task to carry into your next days. Each night, jot down one small thing that actually happened that day which you could see as a response to your steadier presence. A conversation that landed better, a choice that felt clearer, or a minor synchronicity you noticed. Accumulate those notes. Over time, they will be a logbook of your growing signal-to-noise ratio. And now, one last embodied cue, a minute-long practice to anchor you as you step away. Place both feet on the floor. Breathe in, feel the ground. Exhale and imagine the space behind your sternum widening. Let your shoulders drop, soften the jaw, and open your mental palm. Say softly to yourself, I open, I act, I allow. Repeat once. Carry that posture into your next small step. If this message has touched you and you'd like more guidance on cultivating steady presence, consider subscribing to explore further teachings inspired by the work of Seth Speaks and Jane Roberts. There are deeper practices and stories ahead to help you make calmness a familiar terrain rather than an occasional refuge. Stay calm. Open your palm. Let the field meet the signal you now choose to send. The world responds more readily when your hand is gentle.